So, that California drama I talked about last time, this time I'm going to give you the whole story of how I spent $1,200 on a $40 part. And I'm laughing about it now, but I was not laughing then. So let's scroll this back and take a look at how I left myself at the mercy of Lester, a service manager who I haven't figured out yet if he was predatory or just dumb. Maybe you can help me decide. So many things happened in the period right before I had to hit the road from Redondo Beach, California to Flagstaff, Arizona. First, there were the brakes. What's that sound? Isn't it funny that so many of these kind of stories start with a really bad sound? Or maybe it's not funny. Maybe it's not funny at all. Anyway, that sound was a stuck caliper. It probably happened because of the dirt and dust from driving on so many crazy roads. Then the caliper basically tore everything else up, so I needed brake work. Now, brakes break. It's part of maintenance. And this happened right about on time because I was due for new brake pads. I was finishing up medical stuff in California, and then I had to get to Flagstaff for my camp host job. My plan was to wait till I got to Arizona to do that, to go see George in Ehrenberg as soon as I crossed the state line. But the brakes did not wait, so I had to find a mechanic in California, which, you know, if you watched the last one, is not my favorite place to get work done on Macs. The first place I went to said the bus was too big. The second didn't have a diesel mechanic, though I don't really think you need a diesel mechanic to do brakes. They're pretty standard, but anyway, they said no. Finally, one of the no places recommended another place. Well, I mean, I wouldn't call it a recommendation exactly, but the guy said, oh, there's a shop up the street. I saw an RV in their yard the other day, so I don't know, maybe they'll help you. That place, which I'm going to call it Lacey's, protecting the guilty, I guess I'd say, but Lacey said, bring it on over, we'll do it. So I did. They fixed the brakes, and all was well. It sounds easy, right? Back on the road. Until I stopped at a stoplight about a week later and I heard a clunk. Was that the brakes? I just got those fixed. So I drove very slowly and very carefully back to Lacey's. Turns out the caliper bolt fell out. How does a bolt fall out of brakes? I mean, brakes are kind of important. You think you would tighten everything up, but I guess anybody can make a mistake. I mean, there are very nice people here. Lester, the service manager, is very nice. Obviously, they're not charging me for this because it was their fault. This is not the first time I've had issues getting my brakes fixed. I had a serious brake problem for at least a year, though really the problem wasn't the brakes, it was mechanics. You guys remember when I rolled my bus over, right? The reason it happened is because I overcorrected. But the reason I overcorrected, the guy in front of me stopped short to turn and the brakes just didn't stop me. So I swerved to avoid him and then swerved back, and I ended up laying Max down on the driver's side. When I told the mechanic who helped me after all that about the brakes, he installed new ones and sent me on my way. But the brakes still didn't really feel right. And a few months later, I had a near miss. I almost rear-ended a car in front of me. So new brakes, same issue, which is weird, right? I mean, they're new brakes. I went to 2 different shops and both of them said that my brakes were fine. And then I actually did rear end someone on a wet road underneath an overpass. That was very scary. But every mechanic I went to just treated me like I was nuts. Finally, I did some research and I realized if I'm having the same issue with the new brakes as I did with the old, it has to be something that's related, but that's not part of the main brake system. I came to the conclusion that the problem was probably a vacuum leak. See, all those shops didn't catch that because technically it's not the brakes, which is all that they were looking at. So I went to another mechanic with that new info and I asked him to check it out. And he basically patted me on the head and said, ma'am, you don't even have vacuum boost. You have hydro boost. And I said, no, I have vacuum boost. But rather than open the hood and look, which he would have seen my brake booster sitting right there, but instead he starts to get kind of pissed that this little senior lady was arguing. So I left because I don't need to stick around for that, to be gaslighted or mansplained or whatever you want to call it, I was finally able to get to George in Ehrenberg, who I mentioned before. He's a great mechanic. He took me seriously and he actually opened the hood to take a look and he found my vacuum leak. He solved the problem. The point is, I could have died on some highway somewhere if I hadn't taken things into my own hands. Okay, so they put the bolt back in, and I had them check to make sure that everything else looks good. All the other bolts are nice and tight. No more loose bolts, please. If that whole hydro boost versus vacuum boost thing went over your head, don't worry about it, because that's how it is for a lot of people. Especially, I hate to say it, but especially for us older ladies. A lot of the women I know had men around most of their lives to look after the car stuff, and they weren't expected to, or even in some cases, they weren't really even allowed to really know the ins and outs of their own vehicles. I was like that. I mean, not the part about having men around to deal with things, because for the most of my life, I have not had that. But when I went to school, a girl couldn't take shop class. We had to take home ec, which I was terrible at. I'm still terrible at. I relied on mechanics for everything all my life. But then I got this bus, and it's more than a bus, obviously. It's my home, and I have learned not to abdicate authority on this thing. I run into plenty of men, even mechanics, who don't know anything about Max's 7.3-liter IDI engine, so I figured I better learn a few things myself. I am absolutely no expert. I still defer to the experts, but as one guy said, I know just enough to be dangerous. But it was easier than I thought to learn the basics. Not to the point that I can fix a lot of things myself, but I have a pretty good idea of how Max works now, so it's pretty hard to pull one over on me, usually. So the brakes were problem number 1 and number 2, but problem number 3. Shit, I'm supposed to be leaving tomorrow. These batteries are only a year old. I didn't leave the lights on or anything. I don't know what happened. I had a jump pack, but it was dead because I hadn't used it in like 2 years. That's one of those learn from my mistakes. That's why I make them moments. Lithium batteries like to be used, and I should have taken it out and charged my phone with it every now and then, but I didn't. I've gotten a new one since then. This is it. I'll put a link down below, and I'm going to be a lot more careful this time. But anyway, a couple of different guys tried to jump Max after my jump pack turned out to be useless, but none of them could get him to turn over, and the battery just kept sinking lower and lower, revving less and less each time. You know, I'm starting to think that maybe it's the alternator. No more guessing. No more cranking. I'm going to have it towed back over to Lacey's. And I know I had that caliper thing go wrong over there, but it's the only place I have right now. No place else wants to work on it. I mean, just because they made one mistake doesn't mean they're going to make another. In fact, I would think that if you made a mistake like that going forward, you would be extra diligent, probably. And nothing else has fallen out since then. And what are the odds of something else getting screwed up at the same shop? Remember those words. I hope whatever this is doesn't take too long, because I've only got a couple of days to get out of here and still get all the shots I need before I have to be in Flagstaff. See, my plan for driving to Arizona also included stopping to shoot a bunch of stuff for my new second channel, True Crime Travel Time. I have really been neglecting it. I just can't seem to find any time. So I had planned to make some stops on the way back to Arizona to fill in some footage that I needed for 3 different true crime videos that I was trying to do. And I was planning on hitting downtown LA, West Covina, and Joshua Tree. I knew that the longer the repair took, the more I was going to have to cross off my shot list. Lester, the service manager, says that the batteries are shot, and I'm not super surprised. I mean, with the amount of cranking I did, with how long I kept trying to start, yeah, I think I killed whatever was left of them. But they weren't doing very well already. They're diehards, but they didn't really live up to that name. I bought them a year ago, 1 year ago, that's all, from a repair shop in San Pedro, and that repair shop has since gone out of business. And they were the ones that the warranty was made out to, not me, so no warranty on the batteries. There's another mistake to learn from. Yeah, if you can, buy the parts yourself, because then, of course, you'll have the warranty, obviously. But if they won't let you buy it yourself, because some shops won't, at least make sure they get the part from a reputable chain and have them write down the part number on your receipt so that you can go somewhere else. Anyway, the shop talked me into these diehards, and what I wanted was deep cycle starting batteries, because that's what I had before. Supposedly, deep cycles are not ideal for starting, but they started me without fail for 5 years. And I'm not going to go into the differences here and why I like deep cycles for people in our lifestyle, because it's going to bore most of you. And I know somebody right now is in the comments getting ready to tell me why I'm wrong, and that's okay. You can tell me I'm wrong. But anyway, I got talked into them by that mechanic. That's why I ended up with the diehards. And here I am 1 year later. They died hard. And the worst part is I let Lester here talk me into not deep cycles again. I don't know how to explain it. I think sometimes around mechanics, I just turn into like mush brains, you know, because I have this way of talking to you that makes you feel like you're wrong, even when you know you're right. You know what I mean? I'm stealth camping tonight. I'm sleeping at the curb right in front of the mechanic shop. They towed me out here because their insurance won't let me sleep in it on their property. And obviously, if they had to tow me, yeah. There's an update. They put in the new batteries this afternoon, but they wouldn't charge up, which means Lester says the alternator is bad too. He says that was probably the first problem. And then I ran the batteries down and killed them because I cranked it so much. Probably. But when he told me about the alternator, I couldn't help thinking, if the alternator is bad, maybe the batteries were never the real problem. When I asked about that, Lester said, oh, no way, your batteries were toast. Anyway, we already turned him in for course, so we couldn't get him back now even if we wanted to. Okay, so what can I really say to that? He never actually came out and said that they had been independently tested, but I guess I just have to trust it since they're gone already anyway. They ordered an alternator and it's arriving tomorrow, which is Friday. Time is getting tight. I already had to rework my travel plans. Joshua Tree isn't going to happen now. I guess the rest depends what time I get out of here tomorrow. By early afternoon the next day, Friday, they were done with the bus. So I was leaving about $1,200 poorer, but I was finally on my way. I left Lacey's and I started to head into downtown LA because I needed to shoot some stuff at the courthouse. And the shop finished just in time. They put the alternator in, got it all sewn up, just in time for me to get to the courthouse, right before closing. But I didn't get there. See this little doohickey here? This is telling me what's going on with the battery. And, you know, I'm driving, so the alternator should be charging the battery. So this should be going up. It should be like 13.5, 14 volts right now. And instead it's going down. So this battery's obviously not charging. So I have to go back. I am trying really hard not to be pissed. But I am pissed. I came back and I told Lester that it wasn't charging and he says, how do you know? And I told him my voltmeter was dropping instead of rising. And he says, oh, no, that thing's useless. That just shows you the voltage in your cigarette lighter. And I was like, no, it might not be exact, but it's a pretty good gauge of what's going on with the battery. I mean, why would I buy something to show me the voltage in my cigarette lighter? But he just keeps insisting that it's just a plastic piece of junk and it doesn't really show anything. So I said, okay, so if you don't trust this, then hook it up to your big fancy whatever and you tell me if it's charging. So he goes and gets the mechanic and the guy comes out, he opens the hood and hooks it all up, and the mechanic doesn't speak English, but I see him shake his head. And then he said whatever he said to Lester. I don't speak Spanish, so I don't actually know what he said. But I got the gist. And the gist was the alternator is not charging the batteries, just like I said. So Lester goes, oh, I bet they gave us a bad alternator from Napa. But by then I was suspicious, you know. And I mean, I don't know why I wasn't suspicious sooner. I was trying to be a good customer, I guess. And so, I mean, how do we even know it was the alternator? How do we know it was the batteries? I just spent $1,200 on the combination. And, I mean, Lester says, oh, no, your batteries were definitely toast. And I said, oh, you tested them? And he goes, yeah, but it wasn't very convincing. So then I asked him point blank, did you bench test my alternator before you condemned it? And he says, bench test it? We'd have to send it out to do that. We don't have that kind of equipment. And I was like, okay, you don't have a multimeter? And he looks at me shocked. And I don't know if the shock was, you know, that he didn't even think of that, or that he was shocked that I knew what a multimeter was. I mean, I have a multimeter. I could have loaned them mine if they don't have one. So I was like, did you diagnose this at all? And then, you know what he says? He says, we don't have time for that. And I'm like, you don't have time to diagnose the problem? And he says, hey, we charge $220 an hour. You want to pay us $220 to sit around and diagnose? And I was like, yes, there is nothing I would rather pay you for than to diagnose the problem. I mean, otherwise I'm just paying for parts that, you know, I don't even know if they're broken. I mean, how do we even know the alternator was bad? And he says, okay, calm down, calm down. I'm pretty sure it's just going to turn out to be a bad part. So we're just going to send this one back to Napa and get another one. So that's what we're waiting for now. They went to Napa. They got a new alternator. It still wasn't taking a charge. Lester eventually told me that they couldn't figure it out. So now Lester says that they have to keep the bus till Monday. It's 4:45 on Friday. I'm just waiting for them to move it back to the street so I can sleep in it. All my plans are ruined. If they figure it out on Monday, then I'll have to drive straight through to Flagstaff because that will be 3 days lost. The drive's about 8 hours. If they don't figure it out on Monday, I don't know what I'm going to do because I have to get to the job. But obviously, my true crime shoot isn't going to happen.
Hey, Mary, come here.
So just as I was giving up all hope, Lester called me over. I have a surprise for you, he said, and I looked, and there's the bus sitting there, and it was running. He told me, get in the driver's seat, so I did. Now look at your voltmeter. And I wanted to say, oh, you mean the useless thing that just shows the voltage of my cigarette lighter? But I didn't. I kept my mouth shut and I looked and it said 12.8 volts. Now step on the gas, he said. And I did. And the voltage went up to over 13 volts. It was charging. Lester seemed so tickled, so proud of himself. And he's looking at me like he's waiting for me to slap that gold star on his forehead. I said, wow, what was it? And he told me it was the voltage regulator. He must have caught the look on my face because he said, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to charge you for it. Now, the voltage regulator is about a $40 part. And Lester's standing there, pleased at punch at his own generosity for not charging me for it. What about my alternator, my original alternator? I mean, I know the batteries are gone. Did you turn in the alternator for core already too? And he says, well, maybe we could get it back. I don't know. And I said, well, why don't you put it back in and you can give me the money back for this one? And Lester's stumbling over his words. He's like, yeah, I guess we could, but everybody's gone home. You would have to wait till Monday. I looked around. The bays were all shut. The mechanics were gone. It was after 5 o'clock on Friday. The place was closed. If I left right then, maybe I could get some of my shots done and I could drive to Flagstaff like a normal person instead of a bat out of hell. So I left. And I know a lot of you are going to think that it was really stupid to leave that much money on the table, but there was no guarantee, honestly, that they were going to get the other alternator back or that it was going to work, even if they did. And if I waited until Monday to find out and then... My videos are important to me. I wanted to shoot as much as I could on my way to Flagstaff. So I left. But please don't go thinking that this saga is over because it is not. I got some shots of the outside of the courthouse. I was too late to go inside, but that's okay. I got the shots I needed in Covina and in West Covina. Then this happened. At first I thought this was part of the same problem, but the bus was cranking normally. It just wouldn't turn over. It was behaving just like it does when it's out of fuel, but I had plenty of fuel, so it wasn't that, and it wasn't a battery issue because those batteries sounded really strong. Definitely was some kind of a fuel delivery issue, but all I could think about was, how am I having another completely different issue the minute the last one resolves? You know that saying, when it rains, it pours. I was drenched. But luckily, I had CoachNet. If you don't have roadside assistance, get it. And if you are getting it, you might as well get CoachNet. This is not sponsored or anything, but if you have a bigger vehicle like I do, especially, get CoachNet. It's a little more expensive than AAA and the rest, but they're amazing. They had me talk to a technician, and I told him what I knew about the problem, which was that it was fuel delivery, and then he found me a mobile mechanic. So there is more bad news. My fuel pump needs to be replaced. And I can only laugh at this point. It's another part that is 1 year old and was purchased from that shop that's out of business, so no warranty again. Literally, every part I got from them last year has failed, and all the work they did has fallen apart and needed to be redone. But there is also good news. This guy, Danny. He's great to work with, knows his stuff, but he's not arrogant. He listens to me. lets me watch. You know, I have found in every situation but one that mobile mechanics are the ones who save the day. And I think it's maybe because they get to work quickly. And there's kind of an incentive for them to get the job done because they always seem to have another one waiting in the wings. And I haven't found mobile mechanics to be much more expensive, if at all, than shops. I mean, they show up, they focus on you, they get it done, and then it's over, as opposed to a shop where you could be towed in and be fourth in line for service. So the bus got fixed again, and now I have a mechanic in Southern California I can trust. I made it to Flagstaff. I made it to my camp host job, and I didn't have to rush. Leaving Lacey's when I did was me taking care of myself, taking care of my life. And I feel a lot better that I didn't let that shop or those problems own me completely. But I made plenty of mistakes for you to learn from here, and for me to learn from too. The most important one, I should not have assumed that proper diagnostics were being followed in the beginning. I should have asked for proof that the batteries and then the alternator were actually bad before I handed over my card. Although, to be fair, a lot of people do walk into mechanic shops wanting a quick fix. I've done that myself before, so I can't really blame them for going straight to it. But I've learned that both in mechanics and in life, the quick fix is not always the real fix. Digging in a little deeper can really end up saving you money or time or both. And more importantly, it makes sure that the real issue gets the attention it deserves to keep things running and healthy. I don't like being the guinea pig for all these mistakes, the bus ones or the life ones, but I do it for you guys. Learn from my mistakes. That's why I make them. So, Lester, predatory or just dumb? Let me know in the comments. I welcome your comments. I welcome your roasts if you just you can't resist telling me all the things I did wrong. If you want to know what happens next, you should probably subscribe. Come to think of it, that is probably the only polite thing to do after all we've been through together. Don't worry.